A major change has occurred on the Paycheck Protection Program. Just yesterday, on June 5th, President Trump signed a new law changing the existing Paycheck Protection Program with a new law called the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. So in this video, we're going to go break down what are the new changes and how does this affect you as a small business owner. And if you already have the Paycheck Protection Program, we're going to share exactly what has been changed so that you have the latest update. Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Sam Kwok here, one of the Kwok Brothers. And as you know, our channel has been following the Paycheck Protection Program updates as well as the SBA EIDL loan. And we're back at it again with the latest update on the Paycheck Protection Program. So we're going to go break down exactly what this change means and how does this affect you as a small business owner. Now, before we go ahead and break down the changes, be sure to subscribe to our channel if you want the latest update as well as news about the SBA programs. And as always, if you want to learn more about how to invest in real estate, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Okay, so the first change that has occurred to the Paycheck Protection Program is the requirement of how much funds you have to use on payroll. Previously, the old version of the Paycheck Protection Program has required you to use 75% of the funds for payroll allocation. Well, with the new change on the PPPFA, the requirement changed from 75% to 60%, allowing more funds to be spent on other expenses than payroll costs. This has more to do with the forgiveness provision where 75% of the fund had to be used for payroll costs in order for the Paycheck Protection Program to be forgiven. Now with the new changes, only 60% of the Paycheck Protection Program fund has to be allocated for payroll costs in order for the PPP to be subject to forgiveness. However, the law does not change the provision on how the other 40% has to be used for qualifying expenses. So the qualifying expenses, just as a reminder, has to be rent, mortgage payments, not including principal, utility payments, and interest on loans. And again, in order for the Paycheck Protection Program loan to be forgiven, it must be used on qualifying expenses that I just mentioned. Now, my overall thought on the first change is this is actually quite useful when it comes to smaller businesses that don't have as much of a payroll cost, but they have more costs related to lease payments, mortgage payments, as well as utility payments that may eat up more of the budget in terms of running the business. Even if you use more than 60% of the Paycheck Protection Program for payroll, you can still qualify for forgiveness under this new version of the Paycheck Protection Program. The number two change that has occurred to the Paycheck Protection Program is that it extended the use time from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So previously with the old version, you would have to use the Paycheck Protection Program within 8 weeks on payroll costs, utilities, rent payments, and mortgage payments. But now, with this new Flexibility Act that was issued, it is now extended to 24 weeks. So you have 24 weeks to use the funds on payroll costs, utilities, and so on. So this ultimately means that more of your Paycheck Protection Program loan can be forgiven because you have more time to use the funds on qualifying expenses such as payroll, rent payments, utilities, and interest on the mortgage payments. Previously, with the old version of the Paycheck Protection Program, you had 8 weeks to spend that money, and if you didn't spend the money on qualifying expenses, you had to pay it back in form of a loan. Because it's now extended to 24 weeks, more of the Paycheck Protection Program loan can be forgiven instead of being converted into a loan that needs to be paid back. Now, this is great news for small business owners because now they don't have to worry about paying back the loan or worrying about, oh my gosh, I got to use all the expenses or the funds within 8 weeks. Now they can relax a little bit and use that funds within 24 weeks and not having to worry about the loan being paid back within 2 years. But with the 24-week extension on the Paycheck Protection Program, what needs to be done right now is for you to go and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. So go ahead and turn that like button to blue, help us out, and get this video out to as many small business owners as possible so that they understand what the new changes are with the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, the number three major change with the Paycheck Protection Program is now extending the June 30 deadline to rehire workers to December 31st. So previously, the old version of the Paycheck Protection Program required that you rehire employees by June 30, 2020 in order for their salaries to count towards forgiveness. But with this new version of the Paycheck Protection Program, that deadline has now moved to December 31st, 2020 in order for the salaries to now count towards forgiveness. But remember guys, the salary and the compensation paid to the employees are still capped at $100,000 in terms of how much can be forgiven with the Paycheck Protection Program. fourth major change to the Paycheck Protection Program now eases the requirement on how many employees that need to be rehired in order for the Paycheck Protection Program to be forgiven. With this new version of the Paycheck Protection Program, if the business demonstrates that they don't have the ability to rehire the employees, but they try to, they can still now be subject to forgiveness, even though that they have not been able to rehire the same number of employees back into the position. But the new version of the Paycheck Protection Program hasn't really addressed what it means by inability to rehire back employees, so we're waiting on some of the details, but it eased some of the requirements as to what businesses need to do in terms of rehiring the same number of employees back for forgiveness of the Paycheck Protection Program. Last but not least, the fifth major change that has occurred on the Paycheck Protection Program is that it now extends the 2-year term on the loan to 5 years. So it gives more time for small business owners to repay back the loan for the portion of the loan that has not been forgiven. So for example, let's say I borrowed $100,000 under the Paycheck Protection Program, and let's say $60,000 of that amount has been forgiven and $40,000 I have to repay back on a loan. Now instead of having 2 years to pay back the $40,000 loan, I have 5 years to pay back the $40,000, which means that I have more time to come up with the money to pay back the $40,000 loan amount. And let me remind you, the Paycheck Protection Program has 1% as an interest, so for 5 years, you have 1% interest to pay on this loan amount. So this is pretty darn close to free money for businesses to be able to rehire and pay their employees. Overall, this is a great use for small business owners because it gives them more time and more flexibility in terms of how they can use the Paycheck Protection Program, and it widens the qualification as to what part of the loan can be forgiven with this new version of the Paycheck Protection Program. And just as I mentioned, there are still things that are not so quite clear with this new version of the Paycheck Protection Program. So if you guys want the latest update and the details as they come, be sure to subscribe to our channel if you guys want the latest updates and the details to the changes of the new Paycheck Protection Program. And last but not least, I have a little bit of a shameless plug for you guys, and that is we just launched our new book, 0 to 75 Units in Just 1 Year. So if you have any interest in buying rental properties, investing in real estate, this is the book if you guys want to learn how to do that. So if you guys want to grab a copy, go down below in the video description where I left a link for you to go and purchase the book for only $19.95, free shipping. Tell us where to ship it and we'll get it out to you as soon as possible.